share my 23 includes
Some areas could run out of food as a result. At least 72 people have been killed and hundreds arrested in nearly a week of unrest. We'll bring in our guests in just a moment, but first this update from Pamela Miller in Johannesburg.
This is Alexandra Township in the north of Johannesburg, where we've seen significant looting and rioting over the past few days, specifically down this road where businesses were looted. Many of the buildings here were set alight. There has been a significant police presence, but really not enough to stop these incidents of looting. The army has been deployed. We don't see them here today, but it's thought that perhaps soldiers on the ground has managed to calm the situation, at least to some extent. And just behind us, we're seeing business owners and community members now returning here to try and assess the damage, also potentially clean up and try to restore some sort of calm. But really, it's too late, and the government is facing a lot of criticism for acting too late. Many South Africans, many organizations saying more should have been done early on, especially given that there were warnings immediately during and after the arrest of former President Jacob Zuma. Now, it's his arrest and imprisonment that sparked some of the riots we saw specifically in KwaZulu-Natal. They've now spread to the province of Gauteng. And while it was that incident that might have sparked the riots, that's now morphed into more than just the political situation and the imprisonment of former President Jacob Zuma. We are seeing rioting and looting specifically linked to the economic situation in South Africa. People here say COVID-19 lockdowns have left them desperate, they've lost jobs, they can't get jobs, and this is why we've seen businesses looted. People are desperate, and there are concerns around this increasing socio-economic challenges that the government is facing. And while the deployment of soldiers and police might quell protests for now, there's greater concern that if those challenges aren't adequately addressed and resolved, South Africa may continue to see similar uprisings and unrest. Pamela Miller for Inside Story, Johannesburg.
So as we see right here, as the ladies pointed out, that they didn't have jobs. The jobs were gone. So that's what caused all of this in the beginning. So when you don't have jobs, what do you have? You have people in a desperate situation. So the premise was flawed. Not enough jobs. People want a microwave, food, a belt, some socks. If it's that downright low. But look at the scenario here. We're talking about people that are in their own country that's rich in resources. So why are they poor? Why can't they provide for themselves? So South Africa just in itself is proven to the world that just because people go and capitalize doesn't mean it's going to be all good in the end. So we just want to address that issue and try to make sure that we get right to the point. What's going on down in South Africa, rioting, the looting, and all the madness is basically due to people that have came into that area, did not show them how to manage the minerals, how to manage the resources, and how to do, if we're going to play the game capitalization, how to do it collectively. So because of a lack of understanding how to tap their own resources, or resources stolen, the world plays not fair. You have a bunch of poor people with the world's richest resources. So how is that? How do you get that? You know? And then when the volcano erupts, we have the poverty all in our face. So what is the answer to this? Well, they shouldn't have been in the position in the first place, being the richest country on earth. And you can't, the capitalists obviously wasn't hiring them. They were making money out of there, but just like Haiti, pulling money out and owning overseas. So they did burn probably many of their own businesses. What are they saying when they burn businesses? Capitalism. What are they saying? It doesn't work. Why the business? Why burn down the business is the question. And it doesn't make sense. So we got to come up with some kind of reasonable answer. I suggest all collective groups to look at the chapter Deuteronomy 14, Deuteronomy 15, Deuteronomy 26, Malachi 3:10 and 11, 2 Corinthians 8 and 9. And so those that are able help those that have necessities. And that way, there's nothing to go out and get. There's no need for hunger. Everyone has food. There's no need for lack of housing. No big shots call housing on God because the land belongs to God. Everybody deserves a piece of land. Actually for free. Watch and see when the Lord comes. So we have all these challenges and we must come up with some solutions to the problem. The real solution is if we give, we'll be able to deal with poverty. The poor won't be among us if we took care of the poor. If we empowered the poor, and if the poor can give back, in which they've been doing all this time to the capitalists. However, where is it when it's time to give back? They can't give back. Everyone takes their bags, like General Motors left Detroit, and go wherever they're going to get that more money. And exploitation is what runs the world. Capitalism. Exploiting whatever I can capitalize off and make my money. Real estate is big. Now we're dealing with minerals, diamonds, and all those things in the earth. So Africa is rich in resources, but people so poor they gotta go steal a microwave. What kind of democracy is that? Democracy capitalist is that? Is that what Jesus is gonna have? You think when he runs the nations, it's gonna look like this volcano? Oh, these are thugs and criminals and bad people, huh? Or is this the result of oppression and greediness of gain? Capiting more, Micah 2:1-2, than what is necessary to live. When we begin to oppress and covet lands, it's just crazy. Am I blaming South Bank? I'm not blaming anyone. I'm saying these people own the land that's the richest resources on earth. And these people wind up riding, taking microwave. Oh, this is your democracy, you know. Capitalist society. There it is. That's the root of it. You can call them criminals and thugs, of course, and try to whitewash. The fact is, oppression and capitalism in the hands of sinners never work. Corruption in high places always brings these results. Because people are trying to survive. We don't get it. So I suggest Deuteronomy 14th chapter. Deuteronomy 15th chapter. Talks about bringing in 10% of your income and taking care of everybody. Feeding the world. Deuteronomy 26. May I make this suggestion? And then we say, I've given to the things of God. That is, to take care of the things that glorify God. 10%. You also give these things to people like the fatherless, the widow, and the stranger. Yes, and them that dwell among you, even the alien, and that live among your midst. So that in the third year, no problem, we all just have to save in the second year. Because we're going to take care of all the necessities of all mankind. Then God would be glorified by us in meeting the needs through that administration of giving, generously speaking, and there won't be no lack. The poor is with us always because there's going to be corrupt thinkers that think outside of, how can we get everybody a fish sandwich? You know, like Jesus, he didn't put no price tag on when he fed them all. We'll be thinking, how can we get something back? But we need mature people to say, how can we give something and let that money flow? There's enough abundance for everything. Housing is made out of materials out of the earth. God supplied everything for free. So it is the exploitation of corrupt minds of men that want more than their fair share than the Creator gave them, and causes this kind of havoc through usury, greed, greediness of gain. These people don't even have a bank in Africa backed by the currencies that are in their earth. Other banks across seas that plundered Africa have the assets, and the banks from slavery, the private institutions and bankers that capitalize off of this country, they are the ones that's making the loans now. And you know what? With interest. So compound that interest, because you just had to pay that over COVID-19 if you had to use your credit card and you were late. So what I suggest, that the kingdom of God don't look like this, we know. So who's going to execute it? Where there's sharing, where there's giving, where they're sharing the same care for one another, loving your neighbor as yourself. I guess I'll appeal to the churches. Where you at? Because the government shouldn't have to meet their needs. We could take a 10. We could take a 60, a 70, a 80%. Jesus said, if you did it to one of the least of these, you did it to who? My brother. When I was in prison, when I was hungry, you did it to me. So what's wrong with trickle-down economics? What are you talking about? Because that's what it looks like. When they came out of Egypt, they all ate the same bread. You didn't need no more. It turned to worms in what was necessary. That was God's plan. Meaning equality and same value, same care. Necessities of food, no problem. I got you. Your clothes won't wear out, I got you. And here go your tents. Everyone has a house, I got you. And wherever their tent was the land, I got you. That was God's covenant with the children of Israel and the children of Judah. Church, do you have a covenant like that? On the Joshua 1, I got you. If you have yours, are you concerned about your brother that doesn't have his? Because these people over here certainly did. The powers that be. Because everywhere there's revolution, whether in Haiti, whether it be in the Congo, Uganda, it doesn't matter. However, when a person has wealth and the people are still left in usury and left for dead with high rents and inflation, everything else promises, and just came out of a worldwide epidemic, and people making money grabs that already have billions and billions of dollars, manipulating the pinky string, the outcome always going to come in a swift rebuke, especially if the poor have already cried out to the Lord. Yeah, he that lendeth to the poor, giveth to the poor, lendeth to the Lord. Oh, we don't want to bank on that, huh? So the bottom line is, this is the end result of sowing and reaping. But please don't title these people as insurgents or thugs or the enemy or the criminals. Really, the one that say that probably is sitting at ease on an ivory bed, Micah 2:1-2 that. And then put that in the book of Amos and bring Jeremiah to bring a witness against the land. Zephaniah will speak on it as well as Isaiah. So we don't want to hear no more stuff, dude. Church, get busy with giving to the poor, your poor brethren in your churches, so you can be a witness to the other brethren in their churches to do the same. And the world will see that we, if nobody else, when we get wealth and it goes to the top, Acts 4:32 that, it'll wind up in our hands, distributing to necessities. Because if any one of y'all go down there and tell these people, give God 10%, they'll come out of this, brother. I challenge you, you ain't gonna go, because you believe your message now? No, God would have had the 10% you take to them and find the widow, the fatherless, and the stranger, and the poor among you. Bring them to God's table and feed them till they're filled without charge. Fishes and loaves, that's the standard. So giving over the next 10 years will probably be the standard. And we're going to have to keep up with it with vigorous giving, lavish giving, opportunity. Every penny will be accounted for before the Lord's eyes. And how we deal with our brother, especially those in the household of faith, as far as helping, strengthening them in times of hardship over the next 10 years, determines true governorship and who gonna govern when the Lord comes, because it won't be all about just the individual. It always has been about the family. Civilization, and if you're gonna do commerce, is for all that civilization. King Solomon, okay? And it's for all those in that civilization should know and be grateful to give and help their brother because of what? Christianity. Christ came, died, rose. God so loved the world, he had grace and mercy. We love grace and mercy. Snatching some off the fire. Through these lavish acts of giving and strengthening families and strengthening the witness to the families, members' families in your local churches by giving when the necessity comes up in collective ways. Showing the opposite of oppression and taking and thievery and leaving people to be left in the dead during COVID-19. If it wasn't for the government, where's the alignment of the church? Will we be there the next time, or are we busy still cursing the government? Deuteronomy 14 chapter, Deuteronomy 15 chapter, Deuteronomy 26, read them all. Malachi 3:10 and 11, all the tithes. That is for the poor, the widow, the stranger. Seventh deal, open our hand wide and have mercy. Because this is oppression. This is the fruit of it. That's what we're looking at when we look at South Africa. All I got to say is, it's not going to get better. Greedy men will always scheme.
The trigger has to be explained further as Floyd has. We can't run away from the fact that there are problems with the issues of unemployment, wealth inequality, and all the related issues, poverty.
A volcano.
Of course, it's not a new phenomenon. I mean, I was here just there some time being interviewed on the matter of what was then termed xenophobic attacks. They get sporadic, there's contagion, they can spread very fast. Again, the actual issue here is that we have to confront our inequality and joblessness, especially amongst the youth. So the president's statement, in effect, dealt with that. As far as the ethnicity issues, I think perhaps those were earlier assessments, which I think anyone who is with an analyst with any sort will say that at this point that assessment has shown not to be accurate. Okay. Certainly not ethnicity.
Okay, Tim Murithi Bongani, I think, is right in saying that we haven't seen protests per se as we have in the past, with placards and political chants and so on. This hasn't been the case this year. What is happening right now in South Africa? Is this a political problem or is it an economic problem?
Well, in fact, there are multiple dimensions to the story, so there isn't necessarily one side that is, absolutely correct or accurate. South Africa, since independence, has been experiencing protests on quite a regular basis. In fact, some refer to South Africa as the protest capital of the world, particularly around service delivery. So this is nothing new. What is new is the scale and the scope and the reach of the protests, which has spread across 2 provinces at least, and potentially more going forward. So that is really the crux of the matter. There are different dimensions to this, and at the core of it, though, I would say both Floyd and Bongani have got the right analysis. It's a social, economic inequality that can be traced quite far back to the legacy of apartheid and racialized exclusion.
This is why the church must demonstrate with money.
The inability, bluntly, of the governing party, the ANC, to in fact turn around the situation in the 27 years of its governance. But we're still the Zuma years that were technically lost, that in fact we saw a regressive.
But Tim, you talk about the legacy of apartheid. I'm apologizing for interrupting you. You talk about the legacy of apartheid. To what extent, though, I mean, does the legacy of apartheid play into this? As you say yourself, the African National Congress has been in power in South Africa for 30 years, and they came with those promises of addressing poverty and inequality, which they haven't done. Apartheid ended 30 years ago. Why is it that 30 years on we're still talking about this today?
Liberty, and the church must not look like that. Notice how they keep promising. Watch when you keep telling people to keep bringing their tithes and just keep praising their way through it, preaching in America.
But in fact, if you come to South Africa, you will see that spatial apartheid is very much alive and well. Privatization of housing, privatization of healthcare, education, infrastructure access is very much alive.
Real giants.
The inability to undo in fact, the structural inequality that was put in place by apartheid rests firmly in the hands of government, to be frank. The society, the wider society, though, also has a responsibility to, in fact, push, monitor, and ensure that the changes that are necessary to restore the human dignity of the people who are now looting, in the malls, in the shops, in the warehouses, in fact, was achieved. But this is still very much a work in progress. But the sense of isolation is what has led to this deprivation that we're seeing now spilling out on the streets. And this is not an excuse for criminality. But I think if we take a very clinical, militarized police approach to this issue, we will fail to understand the underlying socio-economic drivers and the psychosocial traumatic dimensions of what is actually causing the social unrest and the uprising that we see at the moment in South Africa. That would be incomplete analysis.
It's called let's have a closer look, if we can, at the underlying grievances in South Africa. Many still live in poverty and suffer from inequality decades after the end of apartheid, as you've heard. The World Bank says the richest 20% control nearly 70% of all resources. Unemployment is at a record high of 32.6%, and it's more than 46% among young people. Inflation hit a 30-month high in May, and prices of goods are soaring, while the government has said $35 billion was looted from state funds during Jacob Zuma's 9-year presidency. And coronavirus restrictions have worsened long-standing economic problems, while South Africa faces a resurgence in infections fueled by the Delta variant. Floyd, so we know that there are underlying issues, of course. How does the South African government address this today?
Look, the fact of the matter is that the post-1994 government has not disrupted the economic power relations that defined apartheid. So we are living in a new apartheid state where those that controlled wealth and had access to riches prior 1994 continue to have the power. So that 20% which the World Bank is referring to is possibly constituted of 90 or not 95% white people who were privileged because of the apartheid policies that did not regard black people as human beings, just as extensions of factories and as workers in the mines without meaningful rights. So the biggest problem is that there's not yet been disruption of the economic power relations, particularly in terms of ownership of the land, in terms of the equal distribution of the economy. So that is at the center of the crisis. And also you've got an incapable and corrupt state that always speaks rhetoric and is always engaged in PR exercises that they are fighting coronavirus, they are going to provide jobs, they're going to do this, and none of that is happening. That is where the crisis is happening. But one issue which I think must have to clarify is that protests always take different forms in South Africa.
Right.
Every time they protest in South Africa, government will always characterize it as criminals. Whether it's a protest for service delivery, or xenophobic attacks, or protest for demolition of municipalities, it has always taken this form. It's not just that when protesters must protest, they must go and bring a textbook of what is a definition of protest, and then they must print placards.
Floyd, let's hear from Bongani on this.
And the form it has taken now is what has characterized the protest in South Africa.
Floyd, let's hear from Bongani.
Now, so what we're saying here in this clip is, if you can see that oppression like that, the question of those in authority, ability to deal with money, and be able to do a job where there is wealth or money or necessities able to be met through a just government. The church can demonstrate it through the scriptures I mentioned earlier. God bless you.